Good morning, church. It's Reverend Ahmondra coming to you today from cloudy Carlsbad, California. The sun hasn't come out yet. This morning, before I do anything, I want to say Happy Father's Day to all those fathers out there. We love you, and I bless each and every one of you. I also want us to remember today that many, many families are experiencing grief. This morning, they are in mourning because many of our families have lost men in their life. And I want us to hold them in our hearts as they remember their husbands, their fathers, their sons, their grandfathers, their great-grandfathers, their nephews, their uncles, their godfathers, their co-workers, their fiancés, their son-in-laws, brother-in-laws, their cousins, all those men in their lives this morning. As they sit in their grief, let us hold them in our hearts as we celebrate Father's Day. Father's Day has a long history. 111 years is how long we have been celebrating Father's Day. It started back in 1909 when a young woman lost her dad in a major mining disaster in Fairmont, Virginia. 361 men died. And out of those 361 men, there were 200 and some odd men who were fathers. 1,000 children were left fatherless. And so they had a celebration. A year later, another young woman named Sonora Dobbs decided that she wanted to formalize Father's Day and honor her father because her father took on parenthood after her mother died and raised her as an infant and her 4 siblings. And so she wanted to honor her father and she wanted this day to be official. But it wasn't until 1966 when President Johnson signed a presidential proclamation making Father's Day official. But then President Nixon signed Father's Day actually into law in 1972. So Father's Day has been with us for a long time. But like I said, this morning, many families are standing in a place of sadness because of their loss. I want us to understand that sometimes in our pain, we gain. And what that means is that even though we're experiencing tremendous pain, something good comes out of that. Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science, told us this: nothing in itself is either good or bad. All things exist in mind as potentiality. Now, when we look out into our world, we see bad things happening. Just since the death of our brother George Floyd, there have been 20 plus killings. When we look out, that doesn't look good to us. But what we are hearing is that in spirit, all things have the potential to be good. In 1955, a young man named Emmett Till, 14 years old, traveled from Chicago to Mississippi and was brutally murdered. Terrible, terrible event. But his death gave life to the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement became a catalyst to change legislation in America that changed the face of America. Something that was extremely bad had within it the potential for something good. We can always take good from every experience just by saying, good must come of this. And it will. We speak our word and we feel our word. An affirmation that I have been using during these challenging times is this: I know that God is all there is because God is everything. As we're experiencing the challenges in our lives, we're filled with all types of emotions. There's a pandemic. Thousands of people are dying. And then millions of others are losing their livelihood and their way of doing things. We have never lived through anything like this before. We have questions. Where are we going? When is it going to stop? We have protests taking place in our communities, on our streets. And for many of us, we remember the civil unrest that took place in the 60s, and it's causing us to go back and remember all of those times where we felt hopeless. Many of us are feeling isolated. We're anxious. We're feeling powerless and just downright confused. We don't know where this is going. We have no idea what this thing called the new normal is going to look like. But I want us to rest assured the universe always is moving to keep everything in perfect balance. No thought or creation of man can confuse the eternal heavens. The perfect action of infinite intelligence maintains its creation in peace, order, and harmony. But we ask the question, and rightly so, what do you mean, peace and harmony? When I look around me, I don't see peace and harmony. But I need to say to you, the universe is always restoring itself back to perfect balance. And when the world looks chaotic, we know that the universe is on it. Something is occurring in the invisible that will make everything all right. For us, surrender needs to happen in order for us to accept what's going on in infinite mind and for us to just be still. In stillness, we can receive divine guidance. I want to share a story about a small bird. This bird is called the pipping plover. Now, the plovers love to nest in open areas where it's sandy, there's no people, and there's no vegetation. Unfortunately, over centuries and centuries, people with their commercial and the residential and the recreational use of the plover's habitat took their population down to 8,000. They were put on the endangered species list. But the universe was at work correcting this situation. Hurricane Sandy swept in and just took away all these dwellings and left in its wake sandy places with no vegetation and no people. Perfect habitat for the plovers to make their nests. Their population multiplied 50%. And today, there are 93,000 of those beautiful birds. Now listen to this. The people, they had no idea that their behaviors were impacting the life of these little birds. So what they did is they changed their behaviors and they changed their beliefs. And now they work in conjunction with the universe to make sure that everything stays in balance for those little birds. They have a deeper appreciation for their connections to this little bird that they are sharing their world with. When it looks like everything is totally out of whack, we need to look through that appearance to the truth. The universe is working, establishing balance. And the universe always operates in perfect order, balancing all to its infinite perfection. Now, this may not always feel good, and we may not think it's working the way it should, but trust and believe. There's an intelligence working to bring everything into order so that everything works for every little thing on this planet. One of the most difficulties that human beings have is to change our beliefs. Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science, puts it this way: we generally seem to resist change, even that which is better for us. We need to learn carefully and surely to permit ourselves to accept the full expression of the mind that is within us. There's a power and a presence within us that knows what it is we need to flourish and to be related to each other as divine beings. Our task is to allow ourselves to surrender to divine mind. When you look at a tree, you see the beautiful trunk, you see the branches, and you see the leaves. You don't see the roots. The roots which feed this tree are hidden, and they go deep. When I lived in Ghana, I saw a man working in the field, cutting down this big tree. He didn't have that much trouble cutting the tree down. And it didn't take him very long to get that tree down. But he had to work a day and a half to dig up those roots. Roots can go very deep and be very difficult to remove. That is true for our beliefs. They go deep, and it's not always easy to uproot them. But we need to remember that life is always changing. Our beliefs need consistent re-evaluation to prevent us from infringing on the lives of others, just like those people infringed on the plovers. Our beliefs need to be changing so that we don't become stagnant. We have to remember and honor the wonderfully dynamic nature of life. It's important to embrace the habit of evaluation and renewing our thought patterns. Only then will we be able to welcome new ideas, new ways of doing things, and whatever issues we face, changing them requires a shift in our thinking about ourselves, our world, and our experiences if we are going to be in total and complete balance. Now, many times we think that making an outward change is all that needs to happen. Making a change as moving from one place to another, getting another job, dating a different person, making a new law, pulling down a statue, taking down a flag. Those things will make a difference in the outside world. They're beneficial. But if we want to create long-term systemic change, that takes place within. That takes place in our mind. All change begins in the mind, and then it shows up in our experience as a result. It's important for us to do the work in our minds from the inside out, working from a realm of cause and effect. Many of us are in different places consciously, but one thing is consistent through it all. We are all interconnected divine beings. You can't get away from that. What happens to one happens to another, whether you know it or not, because there is no separation. When we begin to change our thought patterns, we begin to change our behaviors. I used to love when Maya Angelou used to always remind us, when you know better, you do better. So when things are not in your face and you don't see them, you don't know they're there. But if you're open, when you do see something new come into your face, you can look at it. And then you can begin to evaluate how you think and how you feel. And you can begin to shift and you can begin to change. I want to tell you another story. There was an American quarter horse named Fortune. Now, Fortune happened to be born with a deformed foot and a bad attitude. And you know a horse with a bad attitude is not that great. Now, with his deformed foot and this bad attitude, he was destined for the slaughterhouse. That was the only place Fortune was going to go. But one day, a lady named Diabre connected with Fortune. She didn't see Fortune's deformed foot or bad attitude. She saw potentiality for Fortune. And so she took him home to her farm. She rescued Fortune from this dire future that he was facing. Now, Diabre had an accident. She fell down, she broke her leg, and she was on crutches. But she was still running her farm. One day she was inside, and she heard all this commotion. She looked out, and she saw that 3 wild dogs had rushed into her yard and had attacked her goats. She went outside on these crutches, and by the time she got there, 1 goat was dead, and the dogs were attacking this other goat. She tried to maneuver, and she fell down. She couldn't get up. The dogs saw her and start making their way towards her. With all this commotion now, the horses in the back could hear the dogs barking, but they froze in fear. But now Fortune started banging against the gate, and he banged against the gate until it flew open. Fortune ran around the front of the house, grabbed 1 dog, flung him off the woman, kicked the other dog, and chased him off. Fortune saved Diabre's life. Now, we live in a reciprocal universe. When love goes out, love comes back. When we recognize the divinity in all, and we connect with others, human, bird, horse, we are honoring the divine in the most amazing ways. So today, let us honor our oneness with all, regardless of what someone may look like, regardless of where they live, regardless how they are expressing themselves. It's important for us to know that we're all valuable expressions of God. Now, I said it's important for us to know that. I didn't say it's easy for us to always accept that. Our work is not to tell somebody else what they should be doing. I have a friend that always reminds me about that word should. It's not about what someone else should be doing. It's what we can be doing. Change occurs over here. When I change, I give you permission to change. So let us remember to surrender and accept guidance from God. We don't know where we're going in our world right now. We don't know what the future looks like. But I can guarantee you this. If you begin to sit quiet and have a trusting heart and surrender to divine mind, you will be guided to your next steps. The key to having change occur in our world that can benefit all of us is surrendering everything that is holding us in a place of separation. There is no separation in spirit. Separation occurs in our mind. Separation is over here with man. So this morning, as students of truth, I invite you to recognize your own divinity. Let's claim our place as an agent of change and positivity for divine intelligence. Let us know we can be co-creators with God, designing a world that works for everybody, regardless of what people are telling us, regardless of what we might be seeing out of our eyes. Just know the truth. There's a power and presence in this universe, and we can work in co-creation with it. We have the power. It's within us. It's right here. So I invite us today to, yes, celebrate Father's Day. Remember those fathers who have made their transition. Oh, and I want to tell you what happened to Fortune. Fortune went on to be a fundraiser for a charity. And giving rise to children, Fortune raised over $15,000 for this charity. And I'm sure Fortune's attitude changed. I want to add a blessing to each of you, a blessing to these words. And just remember, let us surrender so that we can break this cycle of separation that we think is happening, because it's really not. As divine beings, there is no separation. Thank you for joining me. Namaste, and have a blessed week.